You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
It is Monday, July 29th.
It's a rainy day out there.
It is a very rainy day here in St. Louis.
But it hasn't been for a while, so this is actually kind of a nice thing.
And since we're talking about the legitimate weather, that means we are really here in the studio, not traveling somewhere else.
Like we have been for the rest of July.
For all of July. I was trying to figure out where I have been in the last month. Good to be here. We have some great stories to share with you this week. Most recently, coming up today, we get to talk with Pastor Hoffmann and a unique story, a connection he has with a family in their preschool. Very unique. I don't think I've heard of this kind of connection with a family before in your preschool. So stick around for that. And musical literacy. Is that a fair way to describe what we're going to talk about with Ms. Wook?
Yes, we're gonna dive into the music nerd world pretty heavily. It's gonna be fun.
One of our favorite music educators will be educating us on musical literacy. Looking forward to that coming up in just a little bit. Thanks to our friends at Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about them at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Joining us by phone this morning, Pastor Matt Hoffmann, a pastor at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church and School in Park Ridge, Illinois. Good morning, Pastor Hoffmann.
Hey, good morning.
Thanks for being our guest this morning. I came across a story recently of how you've connected with families in your church and school, in particular your preschool. Tell us a little bit about the life and vocation of a pastor serving a congregation and school. How do you invest yourself in ministry to school families?
As a pastor of a school, I'm learning that one of the biggest ministries we have is a ministry of presence. So just to be in contact with the families as they come in the morning, to be around and be available. I think once families get to see you and get to know you a little bit, they are able to then open up a little bit. And it's been amazing how many chances we've had to share the gospel, to love families when they've been going through difficult times. Just because, you've been around and they see you and they know you and you know their name. It's amazing what those simple acts can do.
Share with us how you learned about a unique story right there in your setting.
Yeah, well, one of our preschool teachers, again, ministering to the whole family and not just to the student alone, was able to find out from one of the moms that she had gotten a very difficult cancer diagnosis. And it was a really aggressive form of cancer, and the prognosis wasn't very good. And so she was, able to let me know that this mom needed some prayer. And so I was able to start, because I'd known this mom a little bit, able to talk with her. Her name is Ellen, so I was able to pray with Ellen, but it was a very difficult thing to hear that this young mom has a difficult cancer situation. And so I remember when I first found out, even before I saw her mom, I went into the classroom and saw her little daughter, and was just became overcome. Just thinking about the difficulty, the challenges that this family would have to face. And I remember I played with the kids as I do for a little while, and then I excused myself and found a little stretch of hallway between the church and the school where nobody was, and was I just found myself crying, weeping over the fact that this family was going to be dealing with a very difficult situation and potentially the loss of this young mom.
What came next? You met the family, you learned of their need, and you saw the harsh reality set in of the pain of sickness in this world. Where did it go from there?
I remember waiting at the end of the day, and Ellen came to pick up her daughter, and we had a chance to pray together. And Ellen has a great church home she goes to. She's not a member of St. Andrew's, but has a wonderful Christian community around her, and I was very glad of that. But it was a chance to pray with Ellen, and she kind of filled me in that she was going in for a PET scan. And it was a few days later, I forget kind of the exact time frame, but she let me know a few days later that the PET scan came back, and it was the best news possible, that she had the cancer, but it was isolated to her liver. And so I remember praying again with her, kind of thanking God that there was a chance that that this would be a treatable cancer. It went from being a very bad prognosis to having some hope. And actually, a few days later, I found out on Facebook that from one of her friends posted on her behalf that she was in need of a live liver donor, an O blood type live liver donor. And I have an O blood type, so I talked to my wife and said, could I call into Northwestern Hospital and put my name on the list to be a potential donor? Pretty ignorant about the process. The liver is an amazing organ that God has made, and they can take part of a living person's liver and use that to make a donation, and then that liver actually will regenerate. It grows back to nearly full size again and is fully functional again. So I asked my wife, and she said, I'm not real wild about the idea of you having surgery, especially surgery that's not medically necessary for you. But she struck me next and said, but if we were in trouble and we needed something like this, we would need someone to step up for us. So she said, you have my blessing to go and get tested.
That's pretty incredible. And the liver is a very unique organ in the body, but it's still the surgery to donate. That it's still a significant surgery. Talk about that whole conversation and that time of learning what that process would be. Right.
Yeah. So I put my name on the list, and there were other people who really also wanted to donate to Ellen. In fact, there were a number of people on the list. It was really heartwarming to see how many people came forward. I found out later that there were two others that came in before me, and there's so many factors that have to match up that most donors, aren't able to donate. And so those two, for as good of a heart as they had, and just the courage to go in and get tested, were not able to donate. So I got called in to get tested, and it was a day-long test. They probably drew 30 little vials of blood and to match all kinds of different factors, and I had psychological testing to make sure I was in a good spot psychologically to go through this. Social workers met with me to make sure we had family support, and they were so impressed that they knew that my church would support me, and so they had no reservations about that. And then you go in for an MRI, and they look to make sure your liver has an anatomy that makes it able to give, because you can have a perfectly healthy liver but just not have a good anatomy for donating. Wow. So I went through all that testing, and it turned out that everything matched up. Wow. And I was very actually excited that I could help somebody in this way. That was kind of weird, but yeah.
So everything was a good match. When was it decided that you would be the donor and that you would go forward with that?
Looking back at it, I was actually, kind of processing through with my wife after the surgery was over and everything, and we kind of said, we made that decision the second Ann said, you can get tested. I think Ann said, I felt confident that if you were a match, you would give, and that's what I expected, and that's what she expected. So I think the decision to give was already made in our minds and our hearts by the time I went in for testing.
So you go in for the testing, and then and everything comes back clear that you're a good match, ready to go, and they schedule the surgery just for any day in the year, right?
It was maybe the worst possible timing. In a way, actually, it ended up being a beautiful event in the timing. But one of the surgeons is a very devout Catholic man, Dr. J.C. Casaido, and he's kind of a character. And he called me up, and he said, Matthew, you're not going to like this. And I started laughing. And he said, well, the one day we can get everybody lined up is April 17, which happened to be Wednesday of Holy Week. And I immediately said, you've got to be kidding me. And he said, no. So I was actually taken aback by that. And as a pastor, you get really full of yourself, and you really think, man, how would my congregation survive without me for Holy Week? And it turns out they did great without me for Holy Week. So we immediately had to, kind of get a lot of guest preachers lined up, and that's kind of when we went public about the fact that I was going to be going through this surgery. And I tell you, it was amazing how many pastors, retired pastors, how our congregation stepped forward. My dad is a retired pastor. He lives out in California, and they flew out to be there for the surgery for me, but my dad actually preached the Easter services at my church, which I thought was a really wonderful thing.
Wow.
So you had a lot of support from your congregation, brother pastors, and your family. That's outstanding, able to make this donation, which is a great gift to Ellen and her family. And how have things been going for Ellen and her family? Has she continued to do well?
She is doing remarkably well. One thing I have to say is our churches really came together, and the day we went into surgery, both churches gathered at St. Andrews and had a prayer vigil while we were getting choked up while we were going into surgery. She had to have a major surgery. When they got in, they didn't want to take any chances, so the cancer was at the end of her bile ducts, and so they actually did a surgery to kind of reroute the bile from the liver, which is called a Whipple, which in itself is a major one So they ended up having to do that before they could even start with the liver donation surgery. And she is one tough woman, because that a lot of times we found out later, doctors would see that someone needed both those surgeries in one day, and out of fear that the patient might not survive, would maybe not do the surgery. So Ellen's doing remarkably well. She was back out of the hospital within 5 days, which was shocking to the doctors. She has been back home, and if you saw her now, you would never guess that she just had this major surgery 3 months ago. Yeah.
Pastor Matt Hoffmann, St. Andrew's Lutheran Church and School in Park Ridge, Illinois. Thank you so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today, and God bless you and your family and Ellen's family as well as you continue to recover.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure to be on with you. Thank you.
Coming up in just a little bit, musical literacy with one of our favorite music educators, Ms. Emmy Wilk. You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Eddie Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.